The 2019-2020 Philadelphia 76ers have been one of, if not the weirdest team I can remember in a long time. Fitting because it's my team. In a league that has been obsessed with spacing, pace, and playmaking from any spot on the floor, the Sixers decided to go with talent and thick, with 2 C's. They pivoted from Jimmy Butler in free agency and managed quite nicely getting Josh Richardson in the Butler sign-and-trade deal. Then they went out and signed Al Horford. But the minute that happened, there were legitimate concerns as well as legitimate strengths that people saw within this team. The things that would fall under those 2 categories have more or less turned out to be true so far, but with a few exceptions. This team has had way more ups and downs than fans were hoping for. As it stands right now, the Sixers sit 5th in the Eastern Conference. The difference between their home record and their road record is like the difference between Season 2 of the Boondocks and Season 4, and that season was god-awful. The 2 young stars haven't progressed as far as people would have liked, and some of the new players on the team are struggling to find their way. After 54 games, head coach Brett Brown decided it was time for a change. He moved Horford to the bench to play his natural position as a center, and the lineups against the Clippers on Tuesday showed that they were more balanced and made more sense. So what the hell are the Sixers? Why have they had such high peaks and then such low, cold, and frustrating valleys? What were the downfalls of the original starting lineup? I'm going to try to explain what I've seen so far this season from this weirdo team. The Sixers offense was under a microscope the minute general manager Elton Brand put this team full of big boys together. Where was the perimeter shooting and shot creation going to come from? How would the offense function when the starting 5 had a wing, 2 centers, and 2 players whose best position is probably power forward? The offense was more or less what we expected with a few quirks. It was undoubtedly clunky, and it's not because of what you think. First, we need to go to Al Horford, who out of all the starters looked the most lost at sea in this lineup. Some of the offensive functionality hinged on whether Horford can play next to Embiid, and the results have been really ugly. The offensive rating with those 2 sharing the court is just flat out bad. Add Simmons to that lineup data, and
you get a complete disaster. Remember this equation.
Some of it was Horford's doing, and some of it is the team's style of play. There were a lot of possessions where Horford wouldn't space the floor properly for the starting unit. But at the same time, his bread and butter, the pick and roll, is hardly ever ran in Philly. The best of Horford has really been brought out on both ends this year when he is playing center whenever Embiid is subbed out of the game, which is why many, including myself, were clamoring for Horford to come off of the bench. He is still a good player even at his age, but not signing a pick-and-roll guard in the summer and the roster construction of this team did Horford no favors. As for the shooting, the Sixers have actually been hovering around average all year. They rank 16th in three-point percentage per cleaning the glass, and they are only 0.5 percentage points away from the top 10. One problem is they don't shoot as many threes as they should. They rank in the bottom third in both attempts and makes. Part of the reason is while there are capable shooters on the squad, they don't necessarily hunt three-point shots. Guys like Josh Richardson, Tobias Harris, and Horford don't have a quick trigger if they get any sign of daylight. Those 3 have also been shooting below their usual standard from deep. Another thing to consider is that 4 of the players in the original starting lineup felt more comfortable posting up in a half-court setting. The Sixers lead the league in post-ups by a mile, in a league where it's becoming increasingly extinct. With this jumbo-sized lineup, you would think they would get to the line a lot to compensate, right? Well, the free throw line is a different story this year for the Sixers compared to the previous 2 seasons. They have been bordering the bottom third of the league in free throw rate, and unless you're someone like Joel Embiid, who is an outlier at drawing fouls, or Nikola Jokic, who is the best passing big man of all time, it's tough to really get consistent offensive production out of the post in today's NBA. So the fact that this team doesn't get to the line at a high rate makes a chunk of their possessions relatively inefficient. In terms of rebounding, the Sixers are among the best in not only offensive rebounding percentage, but overall rebounding percentage. They are able to churn out extra possessions, but they don't turn those opportunities into points as often. Per cleaning the glass, the Sixers are ranked 24th in points off of putbacks. Overcoming the fit concerns of the starting lineup also hinged on a few things from the young stars. Simmons' improvement as a half-court scorer, and I'm not just talking about his jump shot, and Embiid's decision-making and conditioning. If this team was built in a normal way, those things would still matter, but it wouldn't make or break the team. With this roster, the organization banked on Simmons and Embiid taking gigantic and maybe unrealistic leaps in their development. For the most part, the Sixers' defense has been good. But if I'm being honest, given what the personnel on the roster was going to be, the defense has not been as advertised. With all the size and length in the starting lineup, many expected a historically special defense. Over the last month and change, the team has actually had to climb its way to a top 4 defense. The defensive rating for the jumbo starting lineup is even better, but the Sixers should be right behind the Bucks, or at least at a solid second in defensive rating from the rest of the teams. But inconsistent effort has been too frequent. And like everything with this team, the defense is night and day at home versus on the road. Of course, everything on that end starts and stops with Joel Embiid, whose rim protection numbers, even in a down year, are still mind-blowing. Opponents are shooting a slightly higher percentage at the rim this season with him in the game, but teams just aren't attempting that many shots at the rim with him in the game in the first place. He is a grade A deterrent, and for the first time in the Simmons and Embiid era, the Sixers have multiple wings that can serve as point-of-attack defenders and wreak havoc on the perimeter. Ben Simmons has made the jump from a really good defensive player to an All-NBA first-team defender this year. Josh Richardson has been one of the better and dogged defenders in the league for a while. Rookie Matisse Thybulle just does incredible and special things defensively. And hell, if you take out the last few weeks, Tobias Harris has even turned into a solid defender. These guys have chased guards off the three-point line and are funneling them to the 7-2 monster who is dropping back in coverage to protect the rim. There have been stretches this year where the combination of length, size, and point-of-attack defense has been suffocating for opposing offenses. You would just like to see longer stretches of these moments more often. The Sixers have been good defensively, just not special, but my hunch tells me that that level is still somewhere within this team. When you have two players that are the caliber of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, you have to do whatever you can to maximize the talent of those players. The Sixers have tried to do that, but the process they have gone about doing it has been mostly wrong in my opinion. Whether you're talking about former general manager Brian Colangelo or current GM Elton Brand and his staff full of Colangelo people, the Sixers might have amassed a lot of talent, but as it relates to constructing a proper fitting roster, the team has had the same fundamental problem they have had for most of the time this duo has been together. They lack guards who can do something off of a live dribble. Let's go back to the 2017 draft, when the Sixers traded up to pick Markelle Fultz #1 overall. The mindset behind that trade was pretty clear. Pair a pick-and-roll guard who can do many things off the dribble with a playmaking forward and a Nova Star center. The projected lineup before that 2017-18 season was supposed to be Fultz, JJ Redick, Robert Covington, Simmons, and Embiid. That's a normal, conventional basketball lineup that has a balanced blend of scoring, shooting, passing, ball handling, defense, and a basic diversity among skill sets. More importantly, Simmons was going to be at the power forward spot, much like he was in college. We all know what happened to Fultz, and out of necessity, Brett Brown decided to make Simmons the point guard. And this was the start of the organization leaning into Simmons' versatility in the most extreme and incorrect way possible. The Sixers started surrounding Simmons and Embiid with players who were either a big, unitaskers, had some overlapping skills, or who did two great things but could not create without being spoon-fed. Honestly, outside of TJ McConnell and 6 months of Jimmy Butler, the Sixers have failed and have seemingly ignored acquiring actual point guards to put around their two stars. I'm not even talking about elite or B-list guards, just league average guards. Someone else who can dribble a basketball. Getting another ball handler not only takes the pressure off of Simmons in the half court, you can utilize him in different ways. In the playoffs last year, Brown used Butler as the nominal point guard with Simmons as the screener. And this season, Brown has gone back to more of that. While Josh Richardson and the now waived Trey Burke aren't exactly elite creators off of a screen, having just some semblance of another ball handler unlocks Simmons as a roller where he can finish, find shooters, or dump it off to someone in that very same dunker spot that we have seen Simmons occupy so much. It's why fans who watch this team closely were excited about getting Alec Burks at the trade deadline, even though there is a reason the Sixers got him and Glenn Robinson III basically for free from one of the worst teams in basketball. The jumbo lineup amplified the flaws of Simmons as a primary half-court ball handler. Tobias Harris is fine as a B-list scorer. Josh Richardson is actually the ideal perimeter player you would want to put next to Simmons. It's been Horford who has been the most out of place, having career lows across the board. However, Horford is the perfect center to play with Simmons in non-Embiid minutes, which is something that needed to be addressed in the summer. The Simmons-Horford lineups have been killing teams, but despite what every national media member is parroting, it's not because Simmons and Embiid can't play together. It's because Brett Brown has been trying to find ways to maximize a bizarro roster, which has forced him to basically have two separate teams at once. Before the season, any lineup with Simmons and Embiid paired together had an insanely dominant net rating. This year, the pairing still has a positive net rating, but you might notice that the number is drastically lower. Now take Al Horford off of the court and watch the Simmons and Embiid net rating jump back closer to seasons prior. I wonder why. Are Simmons and Embiid the perfect fit offensively? No, but they are so talented that it just works. Whenever the correct personnel is on the floor with them, or players who at the very least have an outline of the skill sets needed to fit around them, we have been able to see clear and obvious examples where the right personnel can smooth out the edges of this duo. Also, I want to point out that no one ever talks about how great of a fit they are on the defensive end of the floor. Simmons' ability to hound perimeter players and guard every position with his unique combination of quickness, size, and length while Embiid lurks in the paint just causes ultimate destruction. This is what makes the conversation about the fit of these two, whether it's among national media or fans who might not watch every Sixer game, just so frustrating. For starters, the talking point of trading one of them is flat out malpractice. Also, it's not even an original take anymore. 2. If Simmons and Embiid are this untenable fit that everyone makes them out to be, wouldn't the numbers at least reflect that just a little bit? The Sixers made some fringe moves at the trade deadline, and who knows what the buyout market will produce, but if there is any way to ease the burden of this roster, there are a few avenues I think the team could explore. 1. The Sixers have to keep finding ways to get another ball handler on the court next to Simmons and Embiid. It not only balances out the lineups, but the Sixers can use Simmons in other ways in the half court. Bringing Horford off the bench, I think, is huge in this regard. It will also help the Simmons and Embiid pairing connect on more plays like these. There aren't many options to go to, but the more Simmons and Embiid are with players who can shoot or create off the dribble, the better. Before trading for Alec Burks, the only other ball handlers aside from Simmons was Trey Burke, Raul Neto, and Josh Richardson, who is honestly hit or miss as a secondary creator. Yet, the Sixers' offensive rating has been great when you take Horford out and slide in Burke or use Richardson as the other ball handler next to Simmons. I'd argue that ball handling has been a more glaring flaw for this team than the shooting everyone has talked about for 2+ seasons now. While Richardson was out, we saw some Shake Milton promise. The second-round pick out of SMU had a good preseason and showed decent play in his first 3 games before injury knocked him far back into the rotation. Before the Clippers game, he had been getting playing time and producing. He is just someone who can, once again, dribble a basketball, but also make quick decisions with no regrets. The sample size is limited, but when Shake has shared the court with Ben and Joe, the offense has been great. I don't know how much Shake will play now that Richardson worked his way back into the starting lineup and Alec Burks is now here, but I hope he still gets minutes. In any case, Shake should be ahead of Neto in the rotation. There is a reason why the coaching staff bounced back and forth between Neto and Trey Burke as the backup point guard, but with Burke now gone, the acquisition of Alec Burks, and Shake coming alive, the team has more answers at guard than they did about a month ago. 2. I will argue with anyone who thinks Brett Brown is a bad coach, but that doesn't mean he hasn't had his hand in this mess. One of my gripes is when Embiid sits, the Sixers run the same defensive coverages with Horford manning the center. There is no one like Joel Embiid. So having Horford try to fill the role when the scheme is mostly catered to Embiid's talents is a misuse of Horford's own strengths. I think it would behoove the Sixers if they switch more with Horford on the court. It plays into his agility and his unique ability to stay in front of perimeter players. I'm tired of seeing Horford drop back in coverage and then be stuck in no man's land as the opposing center finishes a lob dunk over Horford. Take advantage of the size, length, and versatility that's unlocked when Horford is at the 5. 3. I would like to see the Sixers continue to increase their three-point attempts. If players like Harris, Richardson, and Horford just let it fly when they have space instead of turning down a shot and then taking shots like these, it will go a long way in increasing offensive efficiency and spacing on the floor. They also need to make quicker decisions when the ball is in their hands. 4. I would be lying if I said that the progress of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid hasn't been somewhat disappointing. They are still great players, of course, and Simmons has taken a leap as a defender. But as mentioned earlier, the success of this big team hinged on Simmons' improvements as a half-court scorer and Embiid's conditioning and decision-making. None of it has progressed as much as you'd like to see. I know everyone is going to point to Simmons' shooting, and yes, it's ridiculous that at this point he still refuses to shoot, let alone attempt a shot, but to me, I look at his free throw rate and his finishing with his left hand. Someone who at least has the same mold of a body type of LeBron or Giannis should be getting to the free throw line a lot. Over the last month, he has actually gotten to the line and has made over 70% of his attempts. Earlier in the year, though, his free throw rate was on pace to be a career low. While I have seen Simmons finish at the rim with his left hand this season more frequently, I still want to see more. These to me are more important right now than the jump shot. Embiid has been tougher to evaluate for me. There are still times this year where he has definitely coasted on defense, which is crazy considering his numbers are still relatively good, but he has essentially admitted that he is coasting and trying to stay healthy for when the playoffs roll around. So on one hand, if we get the Joel Embiid that has dominated the NBA's best teams this year and was an MVP candidate for the first 54 games of last season, then I have no problem with him coasting from time to time. Where I'm more frustrated with his development is as a three-point shooter, his conditioning still, and a passer. Embiid has shown more and more of his ceiling as a passer this year, but the careless and downright inexcusable and inexplicable turnovers still plague him, and his decision-making still makes you wonder just what the hell is he thinking out there. He has decreased his turnover percentage every season since he's been in the league, and while this season has hovered around the same as last year, you hope by the end of the year it drops a bit more. The shooting needs to improve. Embiid's three-point percentage has been the highest it's been since his rookie year, but the percentage still isn't up to snuff. He has the touch to do it. He's a good free throw shooter, and his form is mechanically sound. He just needs to put the ball in the basket. He also needs to take threes when they're open instead of passing them up and taking a low-value pull-up mid-range shot or recklessly driving into traffic. Yes, Embiid should be taking more threes per game, despite how every 40-plus-year-old person or former center screams at the sky every time he shoots one. Embiid already leads the league in post-ups, and taking an open three-pointer is not only a low-effort, higher-value shot, it still pulls the opposing center from the rim, and it helps Embiid have an easier time getting back on defense so he can set up shop. Every time he passes up an open three or takes too long to make a decision at the top of the key, it's already a low percentage possession. The point still stands that as long as these two are together, the Sixers are guaranteed 50 wins and a chance at contention for years to come, which compared to other teams across the league is all you can ask for as a fan. Even with this roster full of large, odd-fitting humans, Simmons and Embiid are so talented that they still make this team a contender. Ultimately, this team is built for the playoffs. We have seen what they can do versus the best teams in the NBA this year, even if it means they will follow it up with a stinker against Orlando, Atlanta, Washington, or barely eke out a win against the Cavaliers. Who knows if the coach will go back to the original starting five at any point in the playoffs, but it will be interesting to see how the team closes the season now that there are some new players and a change in the lineup.